Well, hey there, once again, First Baptist Monroe students. It's great to be back with you. We're in the month of October. Holy cow, where is 2020 going, right? You're well into your school years, and we're into the fall weather finally, and it seems like things feel somewhat normal. And then, of course, you're reminded of the global pandemic. But fall is definitely one of my favorite times of the year. It really kind of kicks off 3 months of just a lot of fun with the holidays and usual events, and there's a lot of major sporting events tied to this season and family time. There's just a lot of things going on, and so the month of October kind of kicks off all of those things. And so maybe you are someone who enjoys Halloween or all the things that go along with the fall season, but starting with Halloween. I know I am. Not just because of the candy, but there's always seems like fun treats, and it's fun to decorate, and especially to see kids get all dressed up. And maybe you're celebrating Halloween by watching the 31 Nights of Halloween on Freeform, or maybe you're getting ready for parties, or you're just enjoying all of the great candy that's available to you at the store now. Halloween certainly is a fun time of year, and no matter how old you are, it always kind of makes you feel a little bit like a kid again to be a part of Halloween. But also with Halloween is that kind of like weird and scary or odd kind of things that go along, whether it's horror movies or people dressing in costumes, or just stories that are meant to kind of highlight the things that are weird or different. And, as I think about the Bible, and I think about the diversity that is in the Bible, there's a lot of weird and crazy things that happen in the Bible too. As a matter of fact, as we think about the Bible, I think it's important to remember that it comes from a variety of different cultures and people and backgrounds, and there's different writing styles, and there's so much diversity and just content in the Bible. It's not surprising that after a while, if you start to really dig into it, there might be a few weird things or odd things that you find in Scripture. So this month, what we're doing is this really fun series that I'm excited about. We're going to be looking at some of the oddities and weird things that might pop up in Scripture. With the Halloween time in October being all about the weird and odd and different, there are a few weird and odd things that we find in Scripture too. And so all this month, we'll be looking at different stories, all from Scripture, from different parts of Scripture, that are maybe not the usual things that we talk about in church, maybe not some of the stories you've even heard before, but they're in Scripture, and so they're worthy of our attention. So I'm really excited to be able to dive into some of these fun and weird and kind of quirky, different oddities or stories that we find in Scripture. So today, the first kind of odd or unique story that we're going to look at is one that I always find kind of funny, but it is also kind of grim too in a way. And it centers around this prophet in the Old Testament by the name of Elisha. Sometimes you might hear the name Elijah, which was a significant prophet as well. But the guy Elisha, Elisha, was actually the one who took over from Elijah in 2 Kings. And so Elisha was a prophet who was really known for accomplishing a lot of miracles. I mean, he did a lot of important work on behalf of God and for the Israelite people during his time as a prophet. Performed a lot of miracles, as I said, some crazy things, but also some really awesome things too. He was really known also for really kind of ending the worship of the false god Baal. He carried on that kind of mission that Elijah had started, and Elisha kind of really drove it home and helped kind of put an end to this false god worship. So in the story that we're going to look at today, it's in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 through 25. There's just a couple of verses. This is very early on in Elisha's prophecy and in his work. As a matter of fact, he had just come from the city of Jericho, where he had been called to help out where the town was having a problem with its water supply. And it was causing some sickness and some other things, and it was not productive for the land. And so Elisha goes to Jericho, and long story short, he throws salt in the water, and he makes everything better again. And so it's after that moment has just happened that we pick up what happens next. So I want to read 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 through 25, and let's see what happens to our friend Elisha. So, as I said, he had just purified this water, and so he's in the process of leaving Jericho. So this is what Scripture says. Elisha left Jericho and went to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, a group of boys from the town began mocking and making fun of him. "Go away, Baldy," they chanted. "Go away, Baldy." Elisha turned around and looked at them, and he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of them. And from there, Elisha went to Mount Carmel and finally returned to Samaria. So let's just briefly recap what we just heard here. So Elisha is leaving the city of Jericho. And as he's going, there's these group of teenagers, these boys that are all there, and they start making fun of him. I guess we can assume from this text that Elisha was not someone who had a full crop of hair on his head. But these boys, they started making fun of him and calling him names. And then Elisha curses them, and out of nowhere, these bears come out of the woods, and it says it mauled 42 of them. And he just goes on with his day. And the Bible doesn't give us any description of what happened and what was the ultimate result of that attack on those boys. But it's crazy. This is a crazy story. I like to use this story sometimes when people like to make fun of my continually balding hair. So for all of you who like to make fun of that, just remember, be careful what you say, because you never know what might happen, right? But in all seriousness, it is a really odd story to happen, right? And there's not much explanation in it. But it is definitely something that happens in Scripture. And so what do we do with this? How do we make sense of all of this? Well, there's a couple things that come to my mind as I think about this text and what it might mean for us. I think for one, it's important that it kind of reveals the significance of who Elisha was, right? Elisha was a prophet, meaning he was someone who spoke on behalf of God. And so in many ways, he was like a representation of God on the earth. And so as minor of a thing as it might seem for these young people to make fun of him about his physical appearance, I think it has something to say about the fact that that this is a man of God, and to critique him in some ways is to critique God. Now that seems like a bit of a stretch, I know, but I think in some ways that's something that's important for us to remember. And as crazy as this story is, being mindful of what we say and how we direct things to other people. And I think that, to me, is really the most important point of these, just a few verses here for us today as we think about them, is that it matters what we say to other people. It matters to God. Because as funny or as comical as this might be, but really in many ways, I think these kids were trying to bully Elisha a little bit, right? Making fun of his appearance and the way he looked, things that he can't really control. But God saw fit to punish those guys for what they had said. Obviously in a very weird and kind of severe way, to be attacked by a bear. I've never been attacked by a bear, but I can't imagine that it's a great experience. But I think the greater point here is that what we say to and about other people matters. Not only to them, but it matters to God. God is concerned with how we treat other people and what we say about them. I was reminded earlier this week about what in Genesis God said when he had made creation and looked at everything and said it was good. And then he looked at human beings and said it was even more good or especially good. That level of goodness applies to all of humanity, to each and every one of us, to you, to me, to every other person we see on the side of the street. So if God looks at them and says they are good, what right do we have to critique someone else about the way they look, the way they talk, what they may have or don't have? It's not our place to do that, because God sees goodness in them. And so as people who strive to be like God and follow in the presence of God, we need to recognize the eternal heavenly goodness in all people as well. So this week, as you're thinking about this crazy story, obviously don't make fun of bald people, right? But in all seriousness, let's really be intentional about what we say to other people. Because not only is it just wrong to go about hurting somebody else's feelings, it's important to God. And it matters to God what we say to other people. And God really wants us to see the value and the goodness in others, just like God sees in each and every one of us. I hope you all have a great week. I can't wait to get together with you again soon. And blessings on you today and every day going forward. Take care, everyone.